Okay, I'm ready.
Rolling?
Yep.
James, welcome to Canberra. Can you tell us a little bit about why you've come today?
I've come for a lot of reasons. I've also come to collect a petition. The petition is a petition to ask the House of Representatives to legislate for an act that would allow the electorate, within an electorate, to call for a recall of that seat on the basis that 50% of that electorate would sign the petition, plus one person, a majority would sign, they wish that seat to be recalled. The reason for that is Tony Windsor was elected by the people in Tamworth, and they assumed, without any equivocation, that Tony Windsor would support a less socialist government. And Tony Windsor supported a more socialist government. He helped Julia Gillard form a government with Bob Brown. This petition will, in the future, stop a politician betraying his electorate in such a way. I've also come here because it's any person in Australia that has got a little bit of money left to be able to get here has come. Australian small business is severely suffering under Julia Gillard. And this is not by accident. Every single solitary thing that Julia Gillard has done in Australia has been designed to destroy small business. And as a result, the destruction of the small business, also family. She's opposed to Australia maintaining itself as an independent sovereign nation. The way to obtain a state in Australia where Australia can no longer afford to fight her and can no longer afford to fight the Rudd-Gillard plan of an Asian-Australian union in 2020 is to so bankrupt Australia that it's unable to defend itself from the ever-increasing socialism.
So I noticed the Tea Party badge on your lapel. Can you tell us a little bit about the Tea Party in Australia and how it's formed?
The Tea Party in Australia, the convener is David Goodrich, who lives in Brisbane. The Tea Party in Australia, it has a number of charters. One of those charters is to locate from the population people of business acumen who are non-socialist in attitude, who are sovereignists in that they wish to maintain the sovereignty of Australia to act under its own laws and not the laws of the United Nations. To find those people and encourage and facilitate those people into Parliament. The Tea Party also is an organisation that combines the proliferation of organisations that have grown since Gillard and to a certain extent after Rudd became Prime Minister. Since Gillard became Prime Minister, there's been numerous new parties attempting to start, numerous groups, numerous organisations trying to gather momentum to stop Gillard continuing on to deliberately, in my view, destroy the fabric of Australian society. She does everything with a plan that will adversely affect Australian enterprise and Australian capitalism and Australian home ownership. She's presided over the $800 billion worth of rural property bought in Queensland and $600 million worth of property very recently, 43 separate farms bought in New South Wales. I hold the view that she might not have done this so quickly had she not ended partnership with the Greens. I believe the Greens have resulted in her introducing legislation, preparing to introduce legislation into the Parliament deliberately designed to bring about a Greens Australia. And a Greens Australia really ceases to be an Australia. It commences to become part of a world community of nations where humans are secondary to any other consideration. She's done this, the most recent thing that she did was the live export ban. There's a number of reasons why she did that. One of the reasons is that price it could be alleged, is price of rural property in Northern Territory has now fallen between 40 and 50% since the live export ban was placed. The ABC knew what was taking place in Indonesia. They knew that some abattoirs were behaving in a disgraceful, disgusting manner. They never informed the media, they never informed the opposition, and they never informed the Labor Party, to our knowledge, of this behaviour. The ABC Four Corners program sat on that material for an exclusive. They sat on that material, which I holds them culpable for the ill treatment of those animals. Had that animal liberation organisation that was involved with Four Corners distributed the material regarding the shocking treatment of those animals, then it would have been clearly determined that those animals weren't Australian, which is not a serious point. It's a serious point for abolishing Australian trade there, though, and made sure that no Australian cattle were going into any of those particular abattoirs. Instead of doing that, it was shut down overnight with 5,000 cattle on one ship and many other thousands of cattle lined up in feedlots, in holding pens to be exported there, and many others on the way. She did give $30 million compensation, which all Australians gave, because every dollar she gives is an Australian dollar, Australian taxpayers' dollar. She doesn't mind doing that sort of thing. Julia Gillard doesn't mind doing that sort of thing because her plan is to everything that is touched by the Labor government must result in economic hardship. She's currently borrowing around $1 billion a week from Red China. The interest rate is around $100 million a day. The allegation is that when Rudd initially signed the open-ended contract with China to borrow the money, that money was guaranteed against Australian Crown land. No one will answer that question as to whether that was the case or not. Whether it is or not, the point is that China has a huge debt owing to it from Australia. One of the payoffs for borrowing that money was the abolition, virtual abolition, of the Foreign Investments Review Board, which has resulted in China being able to buy Australian real property, which further signifies the disgraceful financial financial distress that Australians are in, that they can't buy their own land. The next thing she did with the Malaysian people swap is quite remarkable, because to hand over one refugee in exchange for 5 refugees, it's well documented now that each one of those refugees coming to Australia will cost Australian taxpayers $90,000. And $90,000 times $4,000 is $360 million.
Why do you say they would cost Australian money?
Because a refugee coming to Australia will have the cost of housing them, re-education, the continuance of the welfare payments.
Why do you assume they're going to go on welfare? Why do you assume they're going to go on welfare?
Because the majority of them do, particularly the Islamic ones.
What do you have to back that up?
Well, I have to back it up, the Islamic figures from France. 5% of the population in France is Islamic. 5% of the population in France have 50% of the birth rate, and only 30% of Islamic people in France don't get employment benefits.
This is Australia, this is not France.
That's exactly right. And to endeavour to find what the figures are here, it's quite extraordinary. There have been lots of allegations by people other than myself that many Islamic people simply have children, don't get employed. There was a recent, and that's just the way it is. I don't propose to be a genius on every figure that's in the Treasury, but if you wanted people to come to this country to work, you'd choose people that worked elsewhere. You'd choose European origins, Africans, Rhodesians, Zimbabweans now, South Africans. You'd choose people who had a responsibility for themselves, to care for themselves, and not rely upon others to feed them. To take a person who's virtually never owned a home, never had the opportunity of owning a home or never the prospect of owning a home, who's too cowardly to fight in their own country, to make their own country into a free nation, to find a way to come to Australia on the knowledge they're going to be cared for, fed for, their health cared for, and paid to have children, is a remarkable reason for so many people to want to come to Australia. Not only are they escaping the socialism of the country that they're coming from, they're also escaping the Islamic socialist attitude towards the creation of capital. It's an Islamic thing that home ownership's not important. What's important is life after death, not life on earth.
Thank you very much.